So hello, soul family. How you doing? We are doing the cosmic currency, which is our transit breakdown for the new moon in Gemini, which happened this morning at 6:24 a.m. Central Daylight Time, June 6th, right? So because y'all know I'm old school, this is the chart that we're looking at, okay? And I've made some notes, and we're going to talk about it. Hopefully briefly, because you know I can be chatty. And it's a new moon in Gemini. So there's three major parts of this transit that I want to talk about. One, obviously, concerning the sun, moon, and Venus all conjunct in Gemini. You can see them right here. And we're going to talk about how they are in square to Saturn, and how they are in positive aspects to the nodes, right? The North Node in Aries and the South Node conjunct Lilith in Libra. Okay, there's also a sesquiquadrate going to Pluto retrograding in Aquarius. And so I want to talk about this in the regards, like new moons are always a fresh slate. They're always something new. There's always some kind of rebirth or, you know, fresh palette, so to speak, with new moons. And this moon, as positive as it is, the challenges are real. Okay. So depending on where Gemini rules in your chart is where this is going to make the most sense per the time zone and everything that I'm doing this for. All of this is taking place in the 12th house, but it really depends on where Gemini rules in your chart and where 16 degrees Gemini is. Okay, so if it's in your 10th house, it might be more career focused or father focused, provider type energy focused. If it's in your 4th house, it's more, you know, around the home, concerning the mother or maternal figures and things like that, how we nurture the self, you know, 7th house partnerships, 2nd house finances. So it could be in whatever area Gemini rules for you, but on the whole, it's got this 12th house energy, which is deeply spiritual, but it's also a house of fears and illusion, the things that we suppress and bury and don't want to look at, right? It's the shadows of the self where we don't necessarily want to see. And the sun and moon are shining light in there, okay? With Venus at that. This energy really is about the face value facts of the reality that cannot be denied, right? The reality of the self, the deep self that cannot be denied. And the way out of this suppressed energy to bring it to the surface might be unclear, or might have some serious reset value, radical reset value attached to it because of the sesquiquadrate challenge from Pluto and Aquarius. This is about reviewing, okay, reviewing the past and the vibrations that you felt in the past when you were more at peace with life. Okay, whether that is dealing with romantic partners or family, because the 12th house has deep familial roots, whether people realize that or not. Because a lot of those suppressed wounds come from family, right, in childhood. Really looking back at different relationship patterns that we've had, either when we were in relationships with a certain type of person or a different type of person, the type of person we're in dynamic ships with now, or when we were free from, you know, certain dynamic ships and we were more authentic and sovereign in choosing how we lead our life. It's asking us to reflect, right? It's asking us to reflect and reevaluate the choices that get us to where we are, the choices that push us out of certain situations and connections, and the choices we make that put us into certain connections and things like that. So where we're at, we're healing, okay, especially with the trine to the South Node and Lilith. We're healing the toxicity of the self that defines our success and happiness according to what we do for other people. The reality of, you know, quote unquote lovers, and how much we value appearances to our detriment, right? When we want to appear we have it all together, when we want to appear that we're solid and stable, when we want to appear like we're happy and we're in partnership when we're not, you know, when we want to come off like we have all of the nice things and we're not talking about the mountains of debt that created all those nice things, you know, like there are certain things that we have to heal in regards to defining our success and happiness through our connection with other people and what we do for them. Okay. This square to Saturn that the Sun, Moon, and Venus are holding, it's challenging the soul bindings. It's not even soul contracts. It's more than that. It's a binding, right? That masks or goes against the beauty of our authentic duality, right? Our mind and our heart, you know, because right now the head and the heart are likely in agreement when it comes to certain dynamic shifts. And they're being challenged by what are hidden spiritual obligations to heal self-abandonment. Okay. The head knows that this is not good. It's seeing certain things in the reality that it does not like, and it doesn't feel good, right? The heart is responding with this agreement to the head, right? That the mind is perceiving the reality and saying, this is not right. I don't like this. There's something wrong about this. And the heart is acknowledging it. Yes, there's something wrong and it doesn't feel good, right? The self is in a state of stress or anxiety or fear or sadness or whatever, you know, doubt, feeling like a victim and trying to ignore it, you know, like making excuses for it. But the head and the heart agree that something is off. And it's against this spiritual obligation to heal self-abandonment, which means we've connected ourselves to certain mirrors in the reality, certain people as mirrors, right? In the reality that we abandon our best self. We're abandoning logic and reason. We're abandoning what feels good. And we're making excuses to perpetuate in certain cycles with people. It's healing, right? The sextile to the North Node in Aries. The opposite end of this is working on healing how we've defined victory through appearances, right? Healing how we've defined quote unquote victory or success through appearances. The sesquiquadrate to Pluto is a brutal reality of the inner energetic alignment, right? Where your vibration is at, right? If we think about the 12 universal laws, one being the law of vibration, we all have a vibration, and then that vibration attracts like, right? Like attracts like. It's the brutal reality of our inner state, right? Our inner state of being, and how deeply we've met ourselves on the healing journey. Because if you are in a state of true happiness, right, if you are in a state where your dynamic shifts in your reality really come together for you, and there's this reciprocal love and consideration, right, this common goal and, you know, open, transparent communication about feelings, and, you know, people are working through things, and you're in a high alignment with this. You're not going to feel the challenges the same way as someone who's been denying, suppressing, running from their abandonment wounds. Okay, you're going to feel it very differently. Someone who has been ignoring their own red flags and their own behavioral faults, their own faulty or false belief systems or perception patterns, they're going to be feeling this in a much more internally excruciating way. On the outside, right? Because the inside is lacking objectivity. It's being narrow-minded and having a short-sighted perspective, right? The need to recognize the self. So the question really is, how are you going to play a prominent role, right? The lead role in being the engineer of your life and what you create for yourself. Because a part of the self, right? This new moon with Venus really wants to be gentle. It wants to be loving. It wants to be charming. It wants to play with love and have fun and flirt with high energy, right? And it wants to laugh and it wants to joke and it wants to have fun, right? Gemini is a very fun and free sign, right? They're very open. I don't know what that was, but it just scared the crap out of me. We'll call it divine confirmation. Wanting to be gentle and loving, right? Wanting to express affection and enjoy the company around you, right? It's very idealistic, right? Gemini is very childlike in its innocence, right? Hey, Lala, how are you? Very childlike in its innocence. And so it's easily hurt, right? It's easily hurt. There's difficulty with this, expressing the self because of deep wounds surrounding the father and obligations to providing structure as a maternal energy, right? Where we want to love and nurture things into stability and provide a certain energy to the experience that brings stability, right? So whether you're a man or a woman, it's going to manifest differently, but the bottom line is the same, right? The bottom line is the same. There's this wanting to be light, right? This wanting to be light of energy and free of wounds, and yet this really heavy difficulty in expressing the self in order to get there, right? The Saturnian energy in Pisces is really forcing you to see the reality that you want to be a certain way and yet can't be, right? It's asking you to reflect in where you've inhibited yourself or abandoned your true or higher self, higher expressions of yourself for past life relationships or in past relationships in general, right? How have you given the best of you to the wrong people? How have you abandoned your higher self in connections with the right people, right? Where you pushed them away or lost them in some regard, right? Where the energy that you were carrying, the vibration you were carrying was off-putting and forced out certain high-aligned pathways with people, right? Where have you inhibited your ability to live your highest connections in this life? There's this need too with the Gemini energy to communicate about the release of demands that your surroundings put on you, whether it's your workplace, right? Depending on the house that Gemini rules for you. It could be your workplace, it could be family or people inside your home, and how you've identified yourself through the self-abandonment wound with them, where you've attached who you are and what your shadows create in you to the manifestation of them, right? Where you've committed to these outer experiences, these mirror connections in your reality, that are tied to this abandonment wound that needs to be released, right? The South Node is like a magic eraser. It's wanting to erase this Lilith energy where you abandon your better self and the manifestation of your better self, right? The expression of it in the outer experience. So this energy, it's really important to recognize that the downfall to it, right? The downfall to it would be pretending or putting on a happy-go-lucky mask that everyone else loves, right? Everyone else loves that you're pretending to be happy. And doing that in replacement of doing the healing work to release yourself from the spiritual abandonment, to release yourself from the shadow of not feeling good enough or feeling unworthy of the creation of your highest good, right? Where you're choosing or opting to be spiritually lazy and self-indulgent in your shadows. All right, that would be the downfall to this transit. Okay, if you find yourself putting on a happy face and smiling and laughing and pretending everything is great when your insides are feeling crushed by the weight of Saturn, right? Crushed by the spiritual weight of these obligations to let this reality go, right? Whatever the reality is for you, right? Whether it is workplace, family, people that you live with, relationship dynamics, the spiritually heavy obligation that your wounds have tied yourself to. All right. With this, we do have the Plutonian energy, right? The Plutonian energy is the second aspect that I want to talk about, because in one facet, it's trining Jupiter, and Jupiter is conjunct both Mercury and Sedna. Jupiter has a wide 10-degree orb, so Mercury is only 4 degrees away. Sedna is 2 degrees off, and it's in this trine. So what's coming from this with Jupiter and Gemini and this Plutonian Aquarian energy is this ambitious need to succeed, right? And it's very optimistic with Jupiter. So it's this ambitious need to succeed, and it's very optimistic. And it's communicating, right? It's actually willing to communicate how opposed you are to doing what is expected of you when doing that makes you wildly unhappy, right? This aspect is actually giving you the fucking balls, right? To talk about what it is that is not working for you in these dynamic shifts, right? It's giving you the courage to talk about it, okay? For some people, it is going to be suppressed inside the 12th house. Like if this energy is taking place in your 12th house, it might be suppressed. And something that you're ruminating on and seriously wanting to express, but maybe having a hard time. And if that's the case, it is going to feel rather painful internally, right? Pluto is going to have that be really deeply uncomfortable. The more that you do not communicate what is going on in your subconscious, right? It's pulling the interior, inner dialogue and bringing it out into the outer reality for other people to experience. It's how you don't like the obligations that you're under, right? That the expectations that you need to fill on an everyday basis for other people are making you really unhappy, right? In some which way, shape, or form. Either you're in high stress or high fear, just under an unreal amount of pressure, right, to maintain certain things, and, you know, feeling like you're about to break, right? This Jupiter energy with this transit and Mercury is really communicating this pattern of obligation, this expectation that I'm continuing to meet. I don't want to meet it anymore. I don't want this expectation, this obligation on my shoulders the way it's been anymore. I can't do it, right? It's making me unhappy. And so Pluto inside that trine and quincunxing the ascendant for certain people, but fortune at 1 degree Aquarius, it's this radical unconscious and conscious, right? It's this weird fine line because Pluto is deeply repressed and unconscious, but the ascendant and fortune is breaking dawn, right? It's coming into consciousness. It's this radical shift, right, into revelation of self-love and fulfilling the self's needs through detachment, particularly through family ties, because in this particular chart transit, Pluto is in the 8th house of inheritance, right? And legacy and what we get from our ancestry and past lives. So there's this real radical shift, right? To kind of love the self and to give the self what the self needs, even if that means detaching, even if it means letting go certain family ties, right? Whether they're your literal family or past life family connections or people that you're tied to financially, right? Because or through sex, right? And children, because the 8th house can also deal with inheritances, children, sex, and things like that, right? Our ancestral karma, the things that connect us to our past healing, things that our parents failed to heal, right? That have become our burden to heal, our responsibility to heal. And so there's this shift, right? If you can tune into this Plutonian energy, and if you are a Pluto dominant person, right? Whether you're Pluto rising or Scorpio rising, or you have significant scorpionic placements in your chart, right? You're being asked to really tap into this Plutonian energy. And if you have strong Aquarian placements for that matter, right? Or if you're Uranus rising or something like that, Aquarius rising, because it is taking place inside Aquarius, really allowing yourself to shift into this almost cold to the old self, right? This detached from the old self where you know your worth and your value and are no longer submitting to a state of worthlessness or not being good enough when you do not meet the demands and expectations of other people. That other people have to learn to contribute and or meet the demands and fulfill the expectations themselves, and that it cannot be all on you. It's allowing yourself to be very cold, right? And cold to your benefit, because all of this caring, all of this projection of the shadow where we abandon the self for other people for the sake of appearances or pride or whatever it is, right? In the reality that it can't persist. The feelings of discomfort are so deep, right? And they're so intense that in order to heal from it, you kind of have to freeze yourself off from the energetically draining circumstances that your wounds created in these outer people, right? No matter who these people are, if you're perpetually pouring all of this energy in and it's not balanced, right? This South Node Lilith in Libra, if it's not balanced, this perpetual pouring is the drain is real, right? The feeling exhausted, the feeling empty, the feeling like you've got nothing left to give. Energy is very real. And so it's needing to become cold to the outer experience, the mirror of people in your outer experience that are the manifestation of your inner self-abandonment wound. That's why they're in your reality. Like there has to be this revelatory acknowledgement that the people that you are in a reality with, that you are draining yourself for, that is this one way or wildly unfair, unbalanced pouring of the self, that they are literally a manifestation of your inner alignment to your shadow energies. That shadow energy within the self, that vibration being unhealed, is the only reason why they exist in your reality. That if you healed that wound within yourself, if you saw your own value, if you saw your own beauty, if you aligned with your harmony, you would have nothing to do with said people, because they do not create harmony. They don't mirror your value. They're not reciprocal and showing you your worth the way you show them theirs, right? The only reason they exist is because you have an unhealed wound, a self-abandonment wound. That's it. And it's surrounding the value of the self that we've inherited from our parents, right? That they didn't heal, that they settled into this idea that serving other people and providing for other people is how you define happiness and success. And that's not true, right? And that's not true. So that's the second facet of this, right? The Pluto aspects. Now, the third aspect is a little looser. The orbs are a little wider, right? It's Mars and Chiron with a 5-degree orb in Aries that's squaring Vesta and Cancer, and quincunxing Pallas Athena in Scorpio. Uranus also has aspects to these two placements, right? Uranus is in Taurus and it's sextiling Vesta and opposing Pallas. And those aspects are exact. They're all at 24 degrees in the sign that they're in. Okay. What you have to understand about the Mars and Chiron aspects with Vesta and Pallas is that there may be a challenge, right? Or a sense of difficulty, feeling like it's hard. Leading your life, right? Being the leader of your life, being the engineer, right? Of your life story, the creator, because of a failure to sovereignly nurture. To nurture the self and create happiness within the self that is not attached to other people, right? Hey, Christina, how are you? It's not attached to other people. So if everything you do and everything that creates happiness for you is tied to other people, then, or other circumstances, when those people or circumstances leave, your happiness goes with it, right? Your happiness becomes obsolete because everything that was making you happy was tied to something outside of yourself. So the biggest challenge in leading happiness within your life is not having something to nurture the self that is truly just your own, right? Something that you do for yourself that brings joy and happiness to your life, including taking moments of peace, including taking time to exercise, and including taking time to catch up with old friends, including taking time to, go out and do something fun, right? Including time to meditate or do your spiritual work or spiritual practice or ritual or whatever it is, right? Because we're talking Scorpio, right? Pallas is in Scorpio. There's a discipline, right? Because Pallas is all about patterns. It's all about defensive alignment in order to get to victory. How do you use your deep beliefs, right? Your deep beliefs that you create ritual around, right? You create a ritual around it. And which ritual doesn't have to be, like we do bay leaves, wishes, and things like that here on the channel for the members with, new moons and candles on full moons. But ritual could be like you wake up every morning, you make your coffee, you brush your teeth, you take your shower, you get your clothes on, you do XYZ, like you take your dog out to go to the bathroom, before you head to work. Like you have a ritual. Ritual and routine are kind of synonymous, right? So it's like, how have you denied yourself being a part of your everyday ritual, your everyday routine, where you spend time focusing on things that make you happy, right? Focusing on things that that bring joy to your life, that don't necessarily require other people. Like, could other people participate and partake in it and share in it with you? Of course they could. But when is it something that you genuinely want to do, right? That you genuinely want to participate in? This is about nurturing the self from a sovereign place and creating happiness within the self that's not tied to other people. Okay. And that's challenging. That's challenging. We want to nurture other people and serve other people. But we ultimately end up feeling like a victim in what we're choosing to do, right? The Chiron wound of feeling like a victim with what we choose to do and lead, right, as the Mars and Aries energy, because we're tied to nurturing the beauty in other people or the sovereignty of other people, right? We want other people to reach their potential. We want other people to be happy and do their own thing. But when we allow them to do their own thing and we allow them to separate, we become unhappy if we've tied our happiness to them, right? It would be like being in a relationship that's toxic, but knowing that you need to let someone go so that they can go live in their joy, but you've defined and attached your happiness to them. So if you let them go to achieve their own happiness, you become wildly unhappy because they've become your definition of happiness, right? It's like that. That's the best way for me to explain it. It's difficulty leading your own life because of a failure to be sovereign, right? To nurture the self-sovereign and not attached to other people. You know, we've got to listen to those patterns of feeling within the self, deep within the self, that propel our healing into action, you know, because we started this talking about how the head and the heart agree, right? If the reality is, it doesn't make sense, right? It's illogical, or it doesn't feel right to stay in it. There are things that are blatantly wrong with the reality, and the head, right? The mind, your own two eyes, right? Perceive it, that something is off. There's some kind of either physical abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, psychological abuse, financial abuse going on in the reality with your connections. And the mind sees it. The mind sees it and is perceiving whatever abuse it is as it is. The mind is calling the spade a spade, and the heart space doesn't like it, right? It doesn't feel good. The heart space within the self does not feel good when it perceives these things that are off. And we have to be able to listen to those patterns in mind and thought and allow it to inspire us and propel us into action and alignment, so that we are no longer a victim of our choices, right? No longer a victim of our wounds, that we can get real deep inside these patterns and see what it is that we're attracted to or drawn to in other people, that ultimately end up spiraling down a train of events, right? This train of events that result in something that doesn't feel good. Like every time we go after a certain kind of person or a certain kind of energy, right, that people hold, it spirals out into something that's toxic and ultimately falls apart, right? Seeing patterns of when we are around positively aligned or highly aligned people that love us and support us unconditionally and consider us and are transparent with us, and yet our behavior starts to push them away, and digging into the patterns, right? That Pallas and Scorpio wants to dig into the patterns and say, well, why do you have this pattern? Why do you feel the need to escape certain high value, high frequency relationships? Why do you attract, you know, these low vibratory energies into your life that wreak havoc in your peace? Right? You attract these dynamic ships that wreak havoc in your peace, whether they're romantic relationships or business relationships or familial relationships, right? People keep reconciling with toxic family, thinking that they're going to change or get better, and they never do. You know, there's all of these things that we have to start embracing. The healing of the self, the ownership, right? The ownership of our life and the healing of the self and our own joy, right? That we can make choices that deviate from the expectation, that deviate from the cultural standard, that deviate from this ancestral karma of pattern and behavior, and break out of these addictions to pain and unworthiness, right? This is what is coming along with these more minor but very present aspects. With Uranus being in the mix on these, there's radical 3D world, like reality patterns that can be seen when you compare how you feel doing for particular others against where you've chosen to love the self in actions or choices that have been separate from them, right? 3D world patterns that you can actually see. Whenever you tie yourself to certain energetic states, other things collapse in your life, right? Like you could have high vibratory partnerships, but then connect yourself to a very low shadow energy. And every time you go after a shadow energy like that, your high vibing, partnerships or your high vibing connections start to dissolve and break apart. You start to lose these high vibratory patterns. Maybe whenever you go after low aligned people, your finances become extremely strained. Maybe your debt starts to skyrocket, right? Maybe when you're in alignment with other people that are of a higher vibration, you're more financially stable, you're able to save money, and different things like that. And so it's seeing the very real world patterns that start to take place when you're watching and reflecting in your high and low alignments, right? Seeing how attaching to your shadows reflects in very real ways. And when you are not in alignment with your shadows, even if you're wildly uncomfortable because the wound is familiar, but when you are separate from your shadow, when you are not in self-abandonment and you're actually in alignment with highly aligned energy, right? Highly aligned mirrors, that your reality actually is better, right? Maybe you have more comfort, especially with the Uranus and Taurus energy, where your comfort level, especially financial comfort, is more in alignment, right? Where it actually feels better to be with certain highly aligned people and high vibratory connections and situations, as opposed to these low aligned ones, And I think that's really important. Like when you are separate from said energies, these one-way pours, right, where you're pouring all of your energy in, or unfairly or unevenly pouring all of your energy in, what it looks like when you weren't, right? Can you reflect back to a time before these certain soul connections were in your life, and maybe how much better off you were, right, before they entered your reality? And you can clearly see, like, that's the beauty of Uranus and Taurus with this Pallas and Vesta energy going on. If you are willing, because willing is number one, you have to be willing to see the pattern. You have to be willing to look at your life and your choices objectively, right? Objectively, and say, every time I choose energy like this, right? When I align myself with needy people, when I allow myself with codependent people, when I allow myself to align with this, savior complex, it creates an unraveling of certain things in my life, right? A financial unraveling or a friendship unraveling, right? Whenever I attach myself to these vibrations or these behaviors, I lose my highly aligned friends, or I lose my highly aligned relationships, right? For some people, it could be very simple, and it's addiction, right? Whenever I align myself with drugs or alcohol or gambling or whatever it is, right? Sex and porn or whatever, spending all kinds of money on video games, like whatever it is for you, shopping. Whenever I align myself and indulge in these energies, I lose other things that benefit me. If I have a behavior pattern that is temper and not considering how other people feel, and I'm exploding or I'm volatile, like every time I partake in those patterns, I lose highly aligned relationships, right? If every time I'm in a high aligned relationship, I find myself being unfaithful and I'm cheating or something like that, or I'm emotionally giving myself to other people where I should be emotionally giving to my partner, right? Emotional infidelity. I start to lose relationships, right? I start to lose high aligned relationships. Maybe every time I attach myself to a certain type of partner, my family who loves me and supports me unconditionally can no longer tolerate being around my energy space because of the partner that I'm choosing, right? Because even if it's a different partner, it's the same energy, right? They don't like them because they feel like they're using me. They don't like them because they feel like, you know, the insecurity or the jealousy of my partner is limiting their ability to be close to them, you know. There's all kinds of reasons why we have highly aligned people leave our life, and it's because we're attaching to low vibratory energy and not calling it for what it is, not accepting it as our responsibility to heal the mirror for what it is, right? When we attach to these people that create real world consequences in our life, and the high aligned situations, people, circumstances that we were in. You know, like you could be with one partner and they're highly aligned, and when you're with them, you're able to save money, you're able to pay off debt, you're able to do things you wouldn't have normally done otherwise, right? And kind of spend a little more freely because you have all these financial resources with a highly aligned partner. And when you leave a highly aligned partner, all of a sudden your debt starts to go back up. All of a sudden, you know, you're broke and you don't have money to do certain things that you were able to do otherwise, you know. So there's very clear 3D world patterns that when you are willing to look at the patterns and accept responsibility for the different situations that you've chosen and how you've chased after things that weren't in alignment or sabotaged things that were, you can heal your life, right? This is a clean slate with the Gemini moon. And so I have faith that if you caught this message and you're dealing with certain things and certain realities, that it puts it into such a perspective for you that you can start to identify how you can realign from your misalignment, because you've identified what the misalignment is and have identified what feeling in alignment is. Because if it doesn't feel good, and it logically doesn't make sense to tolerate some kind of abuse, whether, you know, it's physical, emotional, mental, psychological, or financial, right? It doesn't make sense to tolerate these kinds of abuses, and you deserve to be happy, right? It doesn't feel good to perpetuate in it. And so getting out of these soul contracts, these restrictive, wounding attached soul contracts, these toxic reflections, right? These low aligned reflections. I hope that you can see it. I hope that me doing this and is helping you see it for what it is. And if you have to go back and listen to this a couple times, like I hope that it helps you, because there's a lot of potential progress with the vibrations coming out of this transit if you choose to seize the opportunity. Right? If you choose to seize the opportunity. Hey, Rita, how are you? So I'm going to wrap this up there. I'm going to get ready for the moon event. We're doing the new moon in Gemini secret code name readings. It's the Now You See Me, Now You See Me, right? Themed event. So we're gonna start to kick that off in just a bit. I love you guys, and drop a like. Let me know in the comments if you appreciated this insight and it's helped you in some way. I love seeing your comments, and I will see y'all again in just a bit. Bye, guys.